Wet Lab 2, we're going to look at the difference between chemical and physical changes. Okay, so just a reminder, if we're talking about a physical change, the atoms that are in our compound or molecule remain the same. Okay, so they might change phase, they might move away from each other, but the molecules themselves are still present before and after that change occurs. Okay, so we can easily reverse the process. If we're talking about a chemical change, on the other hand, a chemical change, we are going to break bonds, rearrange the attachment of the atoms, form new bonds at the end. Okay, and so chemical changes are not easily reversible, okay, or not directly reversible. So at the beginning of the lab, there's a list of materials that you're going to need. So you can use beakers. We're going to need beakers and spoons. We will need our scale and graduated cylinder. And we're going to need a few more materials for this lab. So water, some ice. I have crushed ice, but you are welcome to use ice cubes. It'll work the same. Okay, baking soda, vinegar. We're going to need some aluminum foil, our pennies, and some table salt, and then something to help you clean up after yourself. Okay, so we're going to look at those physical and chemical changes. As always, it's essential that we put safety first, and one of the best ways that we can do that is by wearing our safety glasses. And so I'm going to ask you to take a selfie wearing your safety glasses, or put a note card with your name showing those safety glasses if you don't want to do a selfie, excuse me, and include that in your report form. So I'm going to put my goggles on right now so we can get started explaining the procedure for this lab. All of the waste materials for this lab will be able to go down the drain with water, so there is no hazardous materials that are produced. Okay. So we are going to start by thinking about contamination. So as we're carrying out these procedures, make sure that between substances you're cleaning your equipment. Okay, so if you are pouring something into the graduated cylinder and you're going to change materials, make sure that you rinse it out good with water a few times so that, say if there's vinegar in there, it's not present for the next part of the experiment, because vinegar may change your results if there's a little leftover vinegar present. Okay, so contamination is going to be something to think about. So rinse any of your materials as we go through. Okay, the very first thing we're going to do is we are going to look at vinegar and baking soda. So we're going to take a beaker, okay, make sure your balance is tiered and says 0. If not, you can use the tare button so that it says 0 before you start. You can put your beaker on, okay, and so now this tells us the mass of the beaker, but we're not very concerned with what that mass of the beaker is, so we only care about the stuff that we're putting inside of it. So if we hit that tare button, it's going to set the balance so that it says 0. Okay, then we can take our baking soda, okay, and utensil, if you have a spoon or something like that, you can use that. And we're going to add small amounts of our baking soda until we reach the amount that is required by our procedure. So we're just going to continue adding it until we reach that amount. Okay. Once that amount is reached, okay, we're going to move on to measurements with our graduated cylinder. And so we are going to add the amount of vinegar that is required by our procedure. You're going to pour that into your graduated cylinder. Again, record the amount as accurately as you can. Okay, remember how many decimal places that we've learned from previous labs, how many decimal places should be recorded. Okay. We are also going to make some temperature observations. So once you've added that vinegar, feel the temperature, see what your observations are. Okay, make those record those observations. Okay, it's a good idea when you're doing this particular part of the lab that you put our container into a larger container. So if you're near a sink, you could put your beaker into a sink. If you're not near a sink, you could use a larger bowl just to contain any potential spills that may happen. Okay. So just something to keep in mind. Okay. Once you're ready, okay, then you're going to pour that vinegar that you've measured out into the container with the baking soda. And again, make recordings of your observations. So what do you see? What do you hear? Feel the container. What does that feel like? What changes have occurred? Then you're going to decide whether or not a physical or chemical change has happened, and take a picture of your experiment to record it in to include it in your report form. Okay, all of that material can then go down the drain. Make sure you rinse your spoon, your beaker, your graduated cylinder so that there's no contamination for the next part of the lab. Okay. The next thing that is asked to do is ice in an aluminum tray. So if you take a piece of aluminum foil that you have, if you don't have a larger piece of aluminum foil, that's okay. A beaker will work. It'll just take a little bit longer for that ice to make its changes. Okay, aluminum foil helps to speed that up. We're going to make a little tray so we can fold this into a little tray to hold our ice, and we're going to want it small enough that it fits onto our balance well. So I'm just going to fold it up and make a nice little tray to hold and contain our ice. All right, so once we have our tray, okay, we do want to make sure that we record our mass of the tray. Okay. We're going to add some ice to the tray and record its mass as well. Now we have to wait and be patient until that ice goes through its change. Set it aside. We're going to allow it to melt, and once it's melted, we want to carefully transfer that tray and the melted ice back onto the balance to see if there have been any changes in mass. Again, you can record your observations. Take a picture of this portion of the experiment to include it in your report form, and decide whether or not it's a physical or a chemical change, and explain why you have come to that conclusion. Next part, we're going to look at baking soda again. So baking soda, we're going to get the mass of baking soda that's reported in your lab manual. Okay, again, we can tare our balance. Okay. And we're going to add baking soda until we get to the amount that is requested in the manual. Okay. We're going to use our clean, dry, graduated cylinder and add water. Okay. And then we're going to mix our baking soda and our water and record any observations. And again, you're going to try to decide what the temperature is, make some temperature observations, okay? Reserve and make observations about what's happening with the baking soda and the water. And take a picture, record your observations, and decide if it's a physical or chemical change. All right. We're going to look at some aluminum foil. So we have 2 pieces of aluminum foil. We're going to make some observations with our aluminum foil. Okay, so we have 2 small pieces. One is going to be our control, or going to be something that we compare our experiment to. The other one we are going to use in the experiment. Okay, so the very first part, we're going to put our aluminum foil into a clean, dry beaker. Add some water. Okay, wait for 2 to 5 minutes and make some observations. Rinse it, dry it, see if anything has changed by adding that aluminum foil to the water. Okay. Then we're going to put that same piece of aluminum foil after we've made our observations. We're going to add vinegar. So we're going to add the amount of vinegar using our graduated cylinder into that beaker. We are going to weigh out some salt. So you can take some salt, use our balance to weigh out the amount recorded, mix that vinegar and salt together, and wait 10 to 15 minutes. Okay. Once the 10 to 15 minutes is over, remove that aluminum foil. Okay. Rinse it, dry it off, and we can compare it to that piece of aluminum foil that we did not do anything to see if any changes have occurred. Make sure you take a picture, record your observations, explain why you think either a physical or chemical change has happened. Okay. Last part of the experiment, we are going to use pennies. So again, we have 2 pennies. One is going to be a control, and one we're going to do the experiment on. So we're going to add a penny into our container, add water, wait 2 to 5 minutes, see if any changes have occurred in the penny, take it out, rinse, dry it, compare it back to our control. Okay. Then we're going to try adding vinegar and also some salt, waiting 10 to 15 minutes. Okay. Oh, sorry, 2 to 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to wait 2 to 5 minutes, remove the penny, rinse and dry it, see if anything has changed. So once we've added that vinegar and salt, did anything change from where we started at? How has that looked? So you can take a picture before, you can take a picture after, include your observations and explanation as to why you think either a physical or chemical change has occurred. Okay. Then you can clean up all your materials, you can take your goggles off, okay, and think about other places. So there's a question that asks you, where other places have you observed either physical or a physical and a chemical change in your life? And then you're going to include your pictures and observations in the report form for the lab. Again, if you have any questions or anything is unclear or I can help in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to answer and help. So I hope you have fun with this lab and making your observations.